With us is Daniel Garza, president of the Libre Initiative, a conservative Hispanic group. Thank you, both of you. Mike, let me start with you. You warned Democrats that their continued loss of Latino voters specifically could be the key to a Trump reelection. Is it that Democrats are getting it wrong, or is it that Republicans are getting it right primarily?
Good question.
It's actually great question. It's actually a function of both. Although most of the movement towards the Republican Party, which has been happening for about a decade now, since the high of 2012 in the Obama years, is happening despite Republican efforts, not because of them. Most of the evidence suggests that there's a larger demographic shift that's happening with third and now even fourth generation Latino voters. That's where most of the voter growth is. And there's clearly an economic populist strain that is driving most of the sentiment of Latino voters. So the question is exactly the right one. The answer is it is probably a function of both. But the opportunity for both Democrats to bring a lot of those Latino voters back into a historical range is as great as it is for the Republicans to push for even higher historic levels.
Daniel, let me ask you about Trump campaign Latino voter outreach, because with Black outreach, we see the events that the former president is attending, the church event, the roundtable in Detroit, the cigars and cognac that several members of Congress have attended. What is the Latino outreach from the Trump campaign? I know they changed the branding from Latinos for Trump to Latino Americans for Trump, but what's it look like practically?
Well, from my observation, Victor, what I'm seeing is that they're going where Latinos are at. They are connecting in a very real way, in the sense that I think the sentiment that you have to get across, one is that you care. And second is that your ideas are superior to your opponent. And so it's just so important that, showing that you care means you show up, right? You understand what our priorities are. You're willing to listen. You don't come to impose your own agenda. But you want to get a feel for where Latinos are at. And right now, the message is that Biden is not delivering for Latinos. And so Trump is pouncing on that, right? The reality is that working Latinos are not getting a square deal. They are bearing through the ravages of reckless spending, high inflation, and high interest rates. I mean, we just had an anemic 1.3 GDP growth in the last quarter. And that's with an artificial economy that's been inflated with $6 trillion in spending. So, I mean, this is what the Trump campaign is tapping into.
An economic message above an immigration message, because the economic and inflation message, regardless of race and age group, is really what we're seeing at the top across polls. And Mike, let me bring that to you, because as we're talking about, I mentioned that the Trump campaign renamed their outreach from Latinos for Trump to Latino Americans for Trump. I read that you have concern or criticism of the Biden campaign's Latino outreach. It's called Latinos Con Biden Harris, and what that suggests about their strategy. What is your concern?
Well, the whole premise of my book is that the massive growth in Latino voter, Latinos on the voter rolls is happening with third and fourth generation Americans, Latino Americans, who view themselves by a 2/3 margin more as Americans than with a Latino ethnic identity. So when Donald Trump is making this pivot to literally add the name Americans, it's not a coincidence. It's research-based. They know what they're doing. That's where the massive voter growth is happening. The Biden campaign has resorted to sort of an old 1970s, 1980s model of this stereotypical caricature of, a Spanish-speaking, more recently migrated Latino voter. There's nothing nefarious about it or bad about it. It's just probably not very effective anymore. That's kind of an old tactic, again, that was used more last century than this century. So both campaigns are really speaking to two very different voter groups within the Latino community. And for right now, the math is starting to benefit where the Trump campaign is heading. But we're going to have to wait and see which campaign is going to battle more for turnout and be most successful in November.
Yeah, Mike, I read an excerpt from your book where you says that they need to step up and talk to Latinos like real people, not props in an old movie or pay the consequences.
That's right.
Daniel, let me come to you, because you've long been critical of former President Trump's messaging on immigration. I want to play something that he said in the 2016 campaign and then something he said in this campaign, and then get your reaction.
Sure.
They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. They come by the millions and millions and millions. They come from mental institutions, they come from jails, prisoners, some of the toughest, meanest people you'll ever see.
You wrote after Trump said that in 2015 that it is our hope that Mr. Trump reconsiders his insensitive rhetoric, focuses on sensible and effective immigration policy position, and contributes to a more positive and constructive dialogue. The American voter deserves better. Well, he hasn't reconsidered. He hasn't offered anything different. By your framework, he isn't any better. What's your assessment of his rhetoric today?
I mean, it's still the same coarse, uncouth narratives. But, you know, what's interesting is that I think some folks find that appealing. I mean, what they want is to get to the truth, deal with the problem, and find the solutions. Even so, for example, you started the segment talking about this sort of clever campaign with the Copa America. I think it's smart, actually, that Biden does that. But if you're not connecting on the top priorities, impacting our community, pointing to the real outcomes, real increases in opportunity and productivity, I think it'll be seen as window dressing and shallow piñata politics. And they don't see that with Trump. Trump just gets to the point and tries to find the solution. I think he's a fighter, is what Latinos will tell you. So not this campaigning on the cheap, or this mere pandering, campaigning with no real substance, right? In which, you're not earning our vote by talking about the merits of policy like you would with any other constituency. It just seems like it's superficial. And I think this is where Biden gets in trouble, to Mike Madrid's point.
All right, Mike Madrid. I also did not mention you're one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project as well. And Daniel Garza, thank you for being with us.